A typical measure that's taken by independence and liberation movements, anti-colonialist movements, and so on, is to revive the indigenous language, which will inevitably have been replaced by the language of the colonizers, because, of course, colonizers don't just take land. They take our language, they take our culture, they take our identity. The words you use, the words you hear, regulate your thinking. And that's what they were after, regulating your thinking, changing your thoughts, changing your mentality, and the way that you articulate the world to yourself. This is not just about words, it's about thoughts, it's about thinking. So no, I'm not just talking about language literally, like reviving Arabic or Somali or Turkish or what have you. I'm talking about the language that we use to define things, to articulate the world, our lexicon, regardless of what language you're speaking in, linguistically. Because this is about planting our feet firmly in our own paradigm. We have to insist on our own definitions, our own framework, our own lexicon, our own thoughts. That's the language revival that I'm talking about. Because let me be blunt, their language is deception. It's literally impossible for them to not lie. You have to know this from the beginning. You have to know this each and every time you enter into any interaction with a Westerner. Every time they move their lips, they're lying. I know that sounds hyperbolic, but I'm serious. All they do is lie. And that isn't because they're always trying to lie, but it's because lies are all they have been told their whole lives. So practically speaking, that comes out to be the same as lying. They're spreading falsehood, but they can't help but spread falsehood. You can only give from what you have, and what they have are lies. And you have to know that going in. These people are deeply invested in opposing any accurate depiction of reality, because the reality that they live in, the reality of what they have done, the reality of their history, and the reality of their present is atrocious. It's inhuman. It's miserable. It's a disgraceful reality, and has been enabled by and is maintained by continuous, incessant, comprehensive lies and deception. But you can think of it in terms of the West not actually being a society or a so-called civilization, but a cult. It's a cult. And like a cult, they have their own weird paradigm. They have their own made-up story about themselves, about their past, and so on. The only way that you can believe them is if you are simply contained within the rigid confines of that cult mentality. And that's what they've tried to do to the rest of us. Impose this distorted, warped understanding that's nothing but misunderstanding, or rather, anti-understanding of the world. They never call things what they are. They speak in euphemisms and opposites. I mean, think about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. They seek to extinguish the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How? With their mouths. Means with their words, with the language they use, their linguistic framing of things, means their propaganda. For instance, modernity. Take the word modernity. Actually, modernity just means today. The present, whatever pertains to the modern age, the present age, whatever age that is. You know, what was considered modern 500 years ago was modernity 500 years ago. That's not what they mean when they talk about modernity. What they mean by modernity is Western supremacy, Western hegemony, Western domination. That's what they're really talking about. But by substituting their supremacy with the word modernity, then they can make it sound like and make you think that Western supremacy is just a natural progression of human affairs. And any opposition to Western supremacy is regressive. It's like wanting to go back to the days of horse and carriage. All ways of being that do not conform to Western supremacy and uphold Western supremacy are antiquated, out of date, obsolete, old-fashioned, and backwards. You see how they do? With just this one word, modernity, they delegitimize and invalidate any and all rejection of Western domination. That's why you can't use their definitions, because they always misuse them. And if you misuse them the same way that they misuse them, then you will inevitably start thinking the way that they do. You know, if you ask a blind man to describe how something looks and you believe his description instead of what you see with your own eyes, well, I don't know who's more blind, him or you. When you do this, it disables your ability to not only understand yourself and your society properly, but also to correctly understand objectively their society. So you have to dismantle the whole architecture of falsehood and deception that permeates their whole discourse, not only for our own sake, but for theirs as well. I mean, first and foremost, we have to do it because as Muslims, the truth is paramount to us. Muslims are the ones, the only ones, who are religiously obligated to see and understand the world as it really is, obligated to be realistic and unbiased in our assessment and in our judgment. You can't be impartial and unbiased if you're accepting a version of reality from those who are biased and those who are partial. This is basic. I'm talking about what it has done to them to have been raised from birth on incessant lies and fake history, and what it has done to them to live in a world confined within the parameters and within the framework of their cult mentality, their cult paradigm, a cult paradigm that completely prohibits them from recognizing, much less acknowledging or understanding reality as it actually is, which includes the reality of their own actions and their own behavior. They're prohibited from understanding it. We get moved into their paradigms without even realizing it, because we don't grasp the massive cultural and historical context of reality avoidance that underlies everything they say and everything they believe. It's our duty, in my opinion, to dissect whatever they say, like performing an autopsy to determine the time of death and the cause of death. We have to do an examination to determine the cause of the deception and the time when they lost connection to the truth. I'll give you an easy example: capitalism. And the idea of capitalism is to pursue wealth and prosperity, free markets, and so on. Well, the actual rule is that you're supposed to be dedicated to my wealth and my prosperity, the employer, the boss, the company. So you're actually, in capitalism, required to subordinate your wealth and your prosperity to mine. This is capitalism in a nutshell. This then became the mentality of colonization. You, your people, your country, Africa, Asia, Latin America, wherever, your function in life is to make me richer. And that's called me civilizing you. If you're not devoted to my prosperity, then you're primitive and problematic. But that's not what they'll say, because the lies are endless. No, we have to look at the West, look at the world from our vantage point, from our perspective, our paradigm, our understanding, and in our language, according to our terms and our definitions. Everything that they say is obfuscation, misinformation, disinformation, and deformation of reality. Nothing is ever going to make sense as long as we go along with that. Another example, and I've talked about this before, is how they want to partition their history according to, pre-enlightenment and post-enlightenment. No, this is just them telling themselves about how much they have progressed and how much they have advanced while actually standing still. From Viking raids to drone strikes, from feudalism to corporatism, they have remained exactly as they always were. I don't care if you used to listen to the Pope and now you listen to BlackRock, it all plays out the same. If you control the way things are talked about, then you control the way things are thought about. So when you give up controlling how things are talked about, then you give up control over your own perception of reality. And if you give up control over your own perception of reality, then you're nothing but a helpless and defenseless fool who will find himself in slavery and in subjugation without even knowing it, just like the Westerners.